Hey, I thought it was time for another grab bag video. I went down into my collection and pulled 5 records that I know sound amazing. I did some more play testing just to kind of refresh my ears. A few of these I have not played since I've been in my new room with the kind of new setup that I have. But everything that I heard just affirms my original opinions. These are well-recorded albums that are easy for the most part to find in used record shops around the United States, garage sales, antique malls. Go on Discogs if you have to, but I've said this before, I'm blessed to be here in northern Colorado. We have a plethora of used record shops, all the way from Denver to Boulder to Longmont. There's a couple locations in Loveland just south of me, and then I'm in Fort Collins, and I've got more places than I can count. I just went to a place on Saturday that I hadn't been to in a month. It's an antique mall, and I picked up a 1968 Beatles Rubber Soul, near mint condition for $15. That might be another video down the road, but that just gives you an example of the finds that are out there if you are willing to do a little bit of digging and take a little bit of time out of your week and check things out. The title of today's video is 5 $10 records with $1 million sound. The key thing here is $10 records. So here locally, I can find all of these albums for $10 or even less. Your results may vary depending on where you are in the world, where you are in the United States. And I realize that it's a different situation overseas. It's more difficult to find original pressings in great condition, and you may run into inflated prices. The first record I want to start with, and this was kind of spurred on by maybe another video I'll do. I just picked up the high fidelity Rhino reissue of the Cars self-titled album. It is an amazing pressing. I'm really happy with it. But immediately after I finished listening to that record, I decided to go back and pull the 1980 album Panorama. Now, Panorama was a bit of a departure for the Cars. Rick Ocasek and Ben Orr and the guys were more and more being influenced by the new wave movement, and it's a kind of a cool kind of combination of Elliot Easton is doing a lot of rockabilly riffs on this record, but also that kind of staccato rhythmic approach, angular guitar lines that really, became a defining feature of a lot of new wave music and post-punk music as well. And you also have some electronic leanings. Greg Hawkes is doing even more interesting synthesizer lines and various other machines. The guy's like a mad wizard. There is definitely some electronic. I'm not sure if it was Lynn or what David Robinson was using as far as kits were concerned, but you can hear some electronic drum beats throughout this record. I'm talking about, of course, Panorama, and there's that kind of cool finish line flag right there. You'll notice I'm starting to kind of employ something that I saw. That's a little sticker. I'm buying these stickers at any Office Depot or office supply store. And I'm going to start labeling my records so I don't have to constantly go back into the dead wax and figure out what do I have. So in this case, I have a near mint Sterling pressing, mastered by Sterling, and it's a specialty press, one of my favorite pressing facilities from the the 80s and 90s, Specialty Records Corporation to be exact. Now, this record, I just found this 2 weeks ago in near mint condition. I think I paid $9 for it. This was on the Elektra label. At that point in time, this was kind of a blue purplish label. Look at the sheen and shine and gloss. Gorgeous record. The big kind of songs on this record were Touch and Go, Give Me Some Slack, Don't Tell Me No is a great song, Misfit Kid, leading off side 2, an amazing song. But, you know, you've got Roy Thomas Baker producing this band again on this record. It was mastered at Sterling Sound. It was recorded incredibly well. And this record explodes out of your speakers. The stereo imaging is fantastic. It has a very wide soundstage. And there are certain guitar lines from Elliot Easton that really stand out. And Greg Hawkes does some amazing things as well. Rick Ocasek in that kind of deadpan, non-emotive vocal delivery, but peppered with a lot of humor. Check out the lyrics. At some point, he's talking about the kid having cornflakes. I need to read the exact lyric, but this is an underappreciated Cars album, and it's probably the cheapest original that you can find of the Cars run of albums. Panorama, 1980. It sounds absolutely amazing. Okay, the oldest album I'm going to feature today was issued in 1976, and it is a Leo Sayer album called Endless Flight with a very, very cheesy cover photograph, photoshopped in the clouds. I much prefer this back image. He is there with a very tall, but Leo Sayer was very short. A real nice juxtaposition there between those two gentlemen. Richard Perry, famous producer, did a ton of work with, who's coming to mind right off the bat is Carly Simon. He also did work with other artists, including Leo Sayer. They are walking along, presumably outside of, they're on Melrose, I think, but I may be wrong. And this was recorded in Los Angeles at 2 different studios. Studio 55, which was near the original Paramount lot, I believe. I think it's now a parking lot, unfortunately. And then the old Studio Workshop. Now, Studio Workshop was an amazing little recording studio. Some of Pink Floyd's The Wall was recorded there, and a lot of Steely Dan's Asia was recorded there. In fact, during the recording sessions, this is something I've talked about on the Steely Dan videos, they were set up on the tracking day for the title track, Asia. They had hired a drummer by the name of Steve Gadd. The engineer on 2 of these tracks, 2 of the better songs on this album. Those 2 songs are How Much Love and You Make Me Feel Like Dancing. You Make Me Feel Like Dancing was cut on the same day as Asia, the title track, and they used basically the same band that Donald and Walter had assembled, and Gary Katz, because Gary Katz was the guy who did all the phone calls to get the players in. But on You Make Me Feel Like Dancing, we have Steve Gadd, Chuck Rainey on bass, Ray Parker and Larry Carlton on guitar. Ray Parker had lead guitar on this song. Clyde King did background vocals. So they brought in, you know, Ray Parker was not on that Steely Dan Asia album, and they brought in Clyde King as well, Shirley Matthews, Becky Lewis, those great background vocals. You've got Leo Sayer with that incredible lead vocal on that, You Make Me Feel Like Dancing, and that was a big hit for him. I am not totally familiar on Leo Sayer. I think the guy's Australian. Somehow he became a a standout pop star in the 70s in America with a string of albums. But this is a real kind of sleeper album. There is a who's who of LA studio cats on this thing. First of all, you've got the rhythm section from Toto is on here. Jeff Porcaro on drums, an amazing drummer. Also did a ton of work with Steely Dan before moving into Toto. And David Hungate is on bass guitar, Toto's main original bass player. On other tracks, we've got Dean Parks on guitar. We have Lee Sklar on bass on a few of these tracks as well. Bill Payne from Little Feat is on piano on a few of these songs. It's a real fun listen. It sounds amazing. What do I have here? I've got a Winchester pressing. This came out, I think, on Warner Brothers. Yep, on the kind of Palm Tree Boulevard label. There it is. That's Endless Flight with Leo Sayer. All right, next up is a classic 1978 album. It went all the way to #1 on the Billboard charts. And if you read the credits to this album, it's really all you need to know that it's going to sound absolutely amazing. I'm talking about the producer Ted Templeman and his typical right-hand man, his lead engineer, gentleman by the name of Don Landy. Where have we heard these names before? Oh yeah, that band from Pasadena, Van Halen. Templeman and Landy were basically the architects of the classic Van Halen sound, working in junction with the mad genius Eddie Van Halen on some of those incredible guitar tones on those first several albums. But let's talk about the 78 album, the Doobie Brothers, Minute by Minute. I have a Monarch pressing. It sounds absolutely amazing. When I think about this album, I think about those string of hits. Let me refresh my memory. String of hits on side 1. First of all, leading off the album, track 1, a really pretty vocal by Michael McDonald on this one, Here to Love You. But I love the opening, the entry point to this, which is a incredibly well recorded drum sounds and a drum riff. Real nice, dry, not a lot of reverb, a classic 1970s, well-engineered LA session drum riff, leading off Here to Love You. And then we go into, the opening, and then we move into, I believe it's Michael McDonald on keyboards. And then we segue into Michael's vocal, which is incredible. That's the way this album starts, and it sounds fucking amazing. Here to Love You. Moving then into What a Fool Believes, Minute by Minute, track 3. And then track 4, Depending on You, a co-written piece between McDonald and Patrick Simmons, and Patrick Simmons takes lead vocals on this. A real nice bluesy, jazzy feel to the song with some accentuated horns on there as well. It is a standout, deeper track on the album. And then on side 2, there are a couple other special songs that I really love as well. There is the fun instrumental Steamer Lane Breakdown. Consider this a finger-picking hoedown, and you've got some fiddle on that as well. It's a real fun listen, and again, recorded incredibly well. You Never Change is kind of a lover's lament tune. And then How Do the Fools Survive? another Michael McDonald, co-written by Carol Bayer Sager. Really, really easy to find out there, ladies and gentlemen. I recommend getting the Monarch pressing. It was issued, of course, on the Warner Brothers label as well. There is a look at that record. It came in a nice heavy cardboard sleeve. And, you know, this is so many, it kind of harkens back to Steely Dan. You've got Michael McDonald in the middle there with his incredible vocal range. And right here, Jeff Skunk Baxter, multi-stringed instrumentalist, amazing guitar player, a good composer. This was the last album that Skunk was featured on the Doobie Brothers. He went on to other things. And pick this thing up if you don't have it. There are a lot of radio-friendly songs that you're going to recognize, but they were so well recorded. You know, I think What a Fool Believes went to #1, won a couple of Grammys. What's not to like? ABC was really the sum of two parts, although there are 4 band members credited on this album. Martin Fry, the ringleader, the incredible vocalist, composer, and then Mark White, a keyboard synth extraordinaire. They were the principals who made up this great band, ABC. How to Be a Zillionaire, 1985. This was kind of the last of their run that kind of included a couple big hits. The one on this album, of course, is Be Near Me, and then How to Be a Millionaire, fun song. This is a good listen. It's, you know, mid-80s production, and when we talk about production and mastering, this was recorded and mastered at the Townhouse Studios in London. I have a video out there talking about recording studios, and I did one on the Townhouse. Dearly departed, great place where XTC, Phil Collins, ABC, I think The Alarm recorded there, In Excess recorded there, so many others. The Jam recorded there. If you ever see any credits, you know, recorded or mastered at the Townhouse, you're going to have a great sounding recording, and this is no exception. It's a fun mid-80s listen, and it sounds really, really good. Recommended. Okay, speaking of the Townhouse, I thought I would finish up with an artist who doesn't get a ton of love in the vinyl community, and that artist is Phil Collins. Now, Phil Collins, in 1985, in January of that year, he was at the Townhouse in London, and he was working on what was at that point called Phil Collins 3. So the third solo album. He found a pocket of time in between the soundtrack work that he was doing. He would be, of course, famously on both stages of Live Aid, Philadelphia and London, in the same day in July of that year. And then in August, he released what would become No Jacket Required. I love this one. It's got the original hype sticker on it. It's got an original price tag from the Sound Warehouse. The date is August of 1985, $7.99. Includes Don't Lose My Number, Sussudio, and One More Night. One More Night was the big ballad on this record. This was a much more up record than the first two solo albums, especially the first solo album, which is pretty melancholy, going through a divorce. But he had with him, as far as the core band was concerned, again, Collins was doing a lot of programmed drums on this record, although when he does break down and get behind a kit, it sounds glorious. Of course, the Townhouse is where they came up with that gated reverb 80s drum recorded sounds for In the Air Tonight. And Hugh Padgham, who produced this album, worked with Collins on that whole approach. This is a fine album. It's got Lee Sklar, the great Lee Sklar, you know, from the 70s, you know, those LA session guys. And then he teamed up, Phil Collins reached out to Lee Sklar. He wanted him on his records. And he would go on to tour with Collins on, you know, several tours as well. Some of the standout songs for me, I like the deeper tracks on this record. I like One More Night, that's that ballad. Take Me Home, I guess that's in second ballad, that ends the album. My favorite track on here, and it's a powerful kind of a band, full band effort, Inside Out. Incredible production on the entire album and on that song. Phil Collins is playing the real drum kit that you can appreciate. Phil Collins in all his power at that point in time behind the drums was a thing of beauty, in my opinion. Daryl Sterner on guitar, longtime live Genesis player as well. So Daryl was along for the ride on this record. And then kind of a sad story, Don Minek, part of the Phoenix Horns, part of Earth, Wind, and Fire, he had he had all of the sax solos on this record, and just a great player. Was doing, researching this video briefly, and, found out that he was actually shot and killed in LA, in Santa Monica, in his apartment in 1993. I think he was 53 at the time. Cloudy information out there about what exactly happened, but they were staking out his apartment. Supposedly a known drug courier kind of drop-off point, and they did a raid on his apartment at like 6 in the morning. And they saw him with a butane lighter in his hand and shot and killed him. But what a talent. The sax solos in various songs on this record are just breathtaking. So a bit of a sad story to that. But, you want a little nostalgia. You want to feel a little bit up and, reach back to 1985. By all means, this is really recommended, and you can find this for $10 all day long out there. Recorded at the Townhouse and mastered at Masterdisc in New York by, you guessed it, Robert Ludwig. This is a great sounding Phil Collins record, and there's no shame in putting this on and reveling in the mid-1980s. Check it out if you haven't checked it out lately. It's a great record. Thanks, everybody. We'll be back later in the week with more. Take care.